Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Unknown. As always, I'm your host Simon Wamps here. One of my writers, in this case Katie. Thank you, Katie's written me an episode on Kozyrev mirrors. The mirror that lets you view the past. That doesn't sound real at all, because I feel like we'd definitely know about that, wouldn't we? It's like that hollow visor or whatever the it was called that was in, like, people like, it's in the Vatican Secret Archives. It allows you to view the past, like some whole virtual reality thing, and it's obviously nonsense. This also sounds like obvious nonsense, but let's dive in. I've never read this before. That's the format of the show. Katie wrote it. I read it. Let's go. First of all, apologies in advance about this episode.
My God! Okay, it's happening!
It contains a lot of things I don't understand. Russian, electromagnetic stuff. How sentences like, the threads of time may yet be woven into the tapestry of human potential, managed to get 28 claps on medium.com. I don't know what a clap is on medium.com, but that is an insane... It's one of those sentences that's like, oh yeah, that sounds profound. Although, is it? Like, when you really look at it, you're like, is it? Is it? It doesn't seem to actually say anything. I was going all over the flipping place, even spending time on the flatearthsociety.org at one point, but I think I finally wrangled this thing into a bit of shape, even if that shape is a spiral with 1.5 turns. Don't worry, that's going to make sense later on. Okay, I was thinking, okay, maybe there's just some joke there that I'm missing, but apparently it'll make sense later. Good. Cool. Today we're talking about the Kozyrev mirror and whether it can actually help us see or even travel through time. Okay, I mean, I doubt it. One of my favorite episodes of Stargate SG-1 is where they discover that like mirror on some like alien planet or whatever, and it allows them to travel to different dimensions. Oh, like, that sounds awesome. I love that like interdimensional stuff like sliders and shit. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. Let's talk about the man behind the madness, Nikolai Kozyrev. This device bears his name, but he didn't actually invent the mirror per se, so how did he get lumbered with the dubious honor of being eternally linked to it? Well, it's all about his theories of time and space. Born in 1908, Kozyrev was a hotshot Russian astronomer who was already teaching astronomy in college by the age of 28. I don't know if that's impressive or not. By the age of 28, you could be teaching astronomy in college, right? You should be, like if you're an academic. Because, like, even when you're doing your doctorate and stuff, you're teaching classes. So, I don't know whether I should be impressed. You got a lot more work to do to impress me, Kozyrev. Maybe invent some sort of time machine, Kozyrev.
Just you wait, just you wait.
Just before we continue with the internet today, do you ever feel like your internet privacy is just slipping through your fingers, getting a little bit out of control? Your ISP selling your data to large companies. You're like, stop it. Don't do that. Well, they're not going to stop it, but you can stop it yourself with Surfshark, today's sponsor. They're not any VPN. They're your digital guardian angel, protecting all of your internet escapades with just a single, and some might say magical click. Surfshark is so simple to use, there's no more tech headaches. You just download, you install, you click connect, and you're good to go. Safe and secure. So, whether you're browsing on public Wi-Fi, where Surfshark step in and encrypt all that information so no bad actors can nick your stuff, or whether you're away from home and you're like, I miss my Netflix from back home, or maybe you're at home and you're like, well, I don't miss Canadian Netflix, but I do see they've got that show that I like. So fire up Surfshark and connect. So protect your privacy and unlock a world of content possibilities with Surfshark today. Use the promo code DTU for 3 extra months for free at surfshark.deal/DTU. Surf the web with peace of mind. Thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring, and now back to today's video. Unfortunately for him, he was arrested as a counter-revolutionary under the Stalin regime and spent 11 years in a prison camp isolated from any access to the ongoing developments in his scientific field. He had a lot of time to think, though, and when he was eventually released in 1948, he dived straight back into astronomy. I've seen 2 diverging opinions emerge at this point of the story. One is that while he was undoubtedly hugely gifted, the decade plus he spent literally out in the cold meant that he was not aware or up to speed on various other technologies and discoveries that had been made, so any theories he had been crafting on his own didn't really end up panning out. He didn't get the memo about nuclear energy being discovered, for example. So while in the prison camp, he was coming up with incorrect theories for how stars and planets heated themselves, which he couldn't reconcile with nuclear fusion after his release. I've also seen that he made several predictions that people thought were pretty outlandish at the time, only for him to have been proved right years later. It's true that some of his later observations did turn out to be correct, such as him spotting an apparent gaseous emission from the moon in 1958, thus putting paid to the idea that it was just an inert lump of rock, which is apparently what the scientific community thought it was at the time. Wait, hang on a sec. Isn't the moon an inert pile of rock? Oh no, it does have stuff, doesn't it? It's got like moonquakes and... Okay, there we go. I mean, it's mostly just an inert lump of rock, though, isn't it? It's the moon. There's nothing there. It's just rocks. I know it's more complicated than that. It's just a joke. I know there's like ice and shit that they want to make into like habitats. Some of his other theories, however, have not been proven to be true. One of Kozyrev's main interests later in life was the theory that time was not linear, but rather a form of energy. According to the website subtle.energy, quoting, "In Kozyrev's work, the past, present, and future exist simultaneously and are accessible at any point in space. He saw this framework and research as the basis for a scientific understanding of psychic phenomena." I mean, okay, like, I'm not some sort of scientist, big brain expert. But from my understanding, it's possible that time isn't, it's linear to us as like three-dimensional beings, but isn't it linear to us in the same way that a piece of paper only exists on one plane? Like we exist on three planes, and maybe the fourth plane, if there's a being that exists on a fourth plane, time is like not linear to them. Am I making any sense? From my like pop science understanding of basic physics. Because Kozyrev's time energy could actually be studied, it has also been suggested it's synonymous with ether, which people used to think existed all around us as a medium for light waves, etc. to travel through. Ether has not been proven to exist, however, so we're not going to specifically mention it again, and the amount of time it took me to research it for not even 2 full sentences is no joke. Sorry, Katie. In the mid-1960s, various Russian scientists were getting very interested in telepathy and extrasensory perception, or ESP, so Kozyrev's out-of-the-box theories could be developed into actual experiments and devices. Kozyrev also referred to the flow of time as torsion, which could be measured to speed up or slow down the flow of the time energy. Time could be measured at different densities, which could be affected by things like the weather and the density of materials themselves. Well, again, he's kind of half right, because time is affected by the density of materials. Time is affected by gravity. So if you have something that's very, very dense and you're close to it, time is going to move slower. Think about black holes. Like time moves slower near a black hole. According to the book Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain by Sheila Ostrander and Lynn Schroeder, Kozyrev told them in an interview, "Time is the most important and most enigmatic property of nature. Time is not propagated like light waves. It appears immediately, everywhere. The altered properties of a certain second of time will appear instantly everywhere at once, just as time is everywhere. Time links us all and all things in our universe." Again, fair enough. Kind of does. Kozyrev died in 1983 and had an asteroid and a crater on the moon named after him, as well as this mirror thing. So I suppose we should start talking about that, shouldn't we? Yes, let's go. It's like looking in a mirror, only not. We're advancing a little further into this mirror maze now. Hopefully no one's got lost yet. Have you ever been in a mirror maze, Simon? Yes, many times. In fact, I went in a mirror maze. I've got kids. So and it's one of those kids and adults things that is like entertaining for both. So whenever I see a mirror maze, I'm like, let's do the mirror maze. And the kids are like, yay! And I'm like, it's going to be fun. And I actually enjoy it rather than, going to the park and sitting on a seesaw and pretending to be, It's like I'm enjoying the time with my children, but I'm not particularly enjoying my time on a seesaw. I went to a good one a couple of years ago, and within seconds we were all shuffling around with our hands out in front of us, not knowing what was what. I found the exit, told my daughter to go a certain way to let other people know, and she went face first into a wall. Whoops-a-daisy. I was fine, though. There's also one in Shrek's Adventure in London, although there were people there guiding us through every turn, so nobody got the chance to embarrass themselves there. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, and I must have been less than 10 years old.
It's been a long time.
And we were some family friends, and there was this big mirror maze, or it was at least big to me as a kid. And the other kid who was about my age, like the son of the family, we were going through this mirror maze together, and he rants. But there's also ones where it's glass, right? It's not just mirrors. There's also very...
Why are we still here?
Yeah, my glasses are broken. I stuck it on with tape. They're not broken. I just lost the bloody screw. There's also ones with glass, and this kid just ran. He was like going through the mirror maze, smashed his face straight on it and got a right bloody nose. And I was like, oh, that looks painful. And then we had to work out to get him out of the bloody maze. I remember it being a right mission. Anyway, back to Kozyrev's mirror. As we mentioned earlier, Nikolai Kozyrev did not create or design this mirror exactly, although he did use curves and spirals to detect the flow of time energy in his own research. By the way, we're not talking about how technically when you look in a mirror you see the past as it takes time for the light to travel back to your eyes. We're talking about actually reflecting time in a way that can be measured, seen, and even moved through. In Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, it says, "Our right and left sides are not mirror images. More of the heart is on the left than our right side. Microbes produce colonies of a spiral structure. Protoplasm, the basic building block of life, is not symmetrical either. Asymmetry is a basic property of life. This can't be a chance thing," Dr. Kozyrev thought. Perhaps the energy of time flows in this pattern. If so, Dr. Kozyrev figured he could see it and measure it in a rotating body like a gyroscope. Altering the time and pattern in a rotating system should add or subtract energy. After years of careful experiments, Dr. Kozyrev and his colleagues found that in a left-hand rotating system, the time flow is positive, it adds energy. In a right-hand system, the time flow is negative. In Dr. Kozyrev's view, our world is a left-hand system and it has positive time flow that adds energy to our universe. What? It sounds like whoever wrote this book has taken some, thoughts by a scientist that weren't particularly well developed and were a little bit outdated and made them into a right mess of things. Before we go any further, I guess I should mention what a Kozyrev mirror or mirrors actually look like. While they can currently be found in a variety of heights and orientations, what we're generally talking about is a spiral of mirrored panels or highly polished aluminium tubing. They should also be able to rotate, though I'm not sure whether the platform rotates the spiral or the spiral remains stationary while the person inside it is slowly spun in circles. The mirror structures are generally taller than a person and are 1.5 turns long, so you can walk into it and go round the bend, so to speak, and then I guess you just sit or stand in the middle. Oh, okay, so it's like a seashell sort of thing going on. Or if you're like me and you suffer from a hair trigger motion sickness coupled with directional insanity, you'll probably bash into several mirrored panels before vomiting on the ground and having to be airlifted out of the thing. Anyway, here's where other scientists came in and really kicked things up a notch. In 2021, the CIA declassified a memo from 1991 about the experiments being undertaken in Russia, and from the way it was written, it seemed as though the US government agency just took the existence of telepathy and psychics as a given. In 1991, huh? I know the US was also into this at some point, see the Montauk and Stargate projects, for example, so I guess it's not that surprising. Yeah, but didn't they realize that nothing happened with them? This was during the Cold War and moved on, and now they're like, maybe the Soviets figured it out. The memo mentions one Russian scientist, Konstantin Buteyko, as having perfected his method in the early 1980s. It also calls Vladimir Kozyrev, who we will mention again later, a well-known authority on ESP. The report details the use of mirrors by saying, Buteyko had perfected his method in the early 1980s by conducting experiments with patient volunteers placed in the middle of a room between two concave mirrors fixed on opposite walls. Sitting beside a patient volunteer, a medical specialist would concentrate on transmitting psychic energy to the patient, as well as empathetically experiencing the patient's discomfort. Researchers believed that the mirrors focused psychic energy. Based on what? The memo then goes on to note how patients tried to psychically transmit geometric shapes to other people in different cities. You know, the wavy lines, circles, etc. This is what proves that Soviet researchers were fiddling around with telepathy experiments, but the CIA report doesn't come to any conclusions about whether these experiments actually worked or whether or not they were implemented by the Soviet military. The answer is no, they didn't work, and whether they were implemented by the military, well, the military implements tons of shit that doesn't really work, so yeah, maybe. While this memo was written in 1991, which doesn't seem that long ago, it doesn't. I was 4. It seems like a long-ass time ago. The experiments it described took place between 1987 and 1988, which for every reason makes it seem like ages ago. It does. Like, if someone tells me they were born in 1991, I'm like, oh, you young whippersnapper. If someone is like me in 1987, I'm like, you got that boomer energy, son. Well, anyway, they weren't top secret, and experiments with the mirror setup continued after this report, thanks to our friends Trofimov and Kozyrev. And in fact, according to Trofimov, it wasn't until 1990 that they really started to ramp up, which was after the CIA finished spying, or whatever it is they've been doing. Probably spying, it is the CIA. As we mentioned, Kozyrev died in 1983, so never got to see where his ideas went, but two Russian big brains in particular, the aforementioned medical scientist Alexander V. Trofimov and Vladimir P. Kozyrev, became deeply interested in his ideas about the time and possibility that a spiral-shaped mirrored tube could be used in some way to enhance telepathic abilities. Yes, I said they were medical scientists, but both were studying human consciousness, and I guess they went down a bit of a rabbit hole. Yeah, it's okay, scientists are allowed to do this, because, look, Maybe psychic stuff is something that exists. There's absolutely no scientific proof to it, but am I against scientists trying to figure it out? Hell no, that's what scientists should be doing. They conducted years and years of research with human subjects sitting inside the reflective spirals, which were being referred to as Kozyrev's mirrors by this point. It was believed that radiation coming from biological subjects, for example, human beings, could be focused inside the spiral and would boost the telepathic abilities of said human being. According to Trofimov, the device was intended to study the untapped reserves of the human brain and consciousness. Let's take the current picture of the world. 100% is all the knowledge that has existed over the past 2 centuries. Of these, only 1% is knowledge about living matter. Living matter is cosmoplanetary formations with the functions of biointellectual quantization, reflection of the holographic universe, and self-reproduction. Okay. This about sums up my research experience with the whole topic, to be honest. I started off thinking, okay, I get it. Then a couple of minutes or paragraphs into the reading later, I'm just sitting there staring at the screen going, what? But I'll try to make this understandable. Okay, yeah, I need some help, Katie. What is he talking about? The only one I know is self-reproduction. That means, well, we know what that means. In order to test the broadcast strength of the mirrors, Trofimov and his team headed to a place called Dixon in northern Russia, which is, according to Wikipedia, the world's northernmost settlement on a continental mainland. Why? Did they just want a holiday? They're like, why can't you do it in the lab? The psychic energy there is strong. They went there because, as well as it being a nice isolated location to carry out some weird experiments, according to Kozyrev's ideas, time flowed very differently the further north you went, and this seemed to be borne out by their experiments, at least as far as I can understand it. There were some people sitting inside Kozyrev mirror structures on Dixon Island, just off the mainland. They transmitted a set of symbols with the power of their minds to another group of volunteers on the mainland who were not in any sort of mirror chambers. These symbols were a random selection from a set that was chosen by a computer. It turned out that somehow the people on the mainland were receiving the symbols hours before the person transmitting them had actually done it yet. According to Trofimov, the biggest phenomenal result was that an hour, 5, and 7 hours before the computer randomly generated the symbols, they had already been received by the group. This happened several times. The phenomenal result obtained proves that Nikolai Kozyrev was right. In the far north, the future is present in the present. Wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff indeed. And also, I don't think this is going to stand up to peer review. If this was a thing, I feel like we'd definitely know about it, wouldn't we?
You may have fooled the others, Mr. Peterson, but you don't fool me.
I will add in here that there were also stories of the mirrors in the north making the northern lights grow brighter, or even actually reacting to the thoughts of those in the mirrors. Also, apparently, researchers have put some weird ancient symbol inside one mirror, which caused a force field to spring up around it and ball lightning to shoot out. We're just playing all the hits here. Yeah, it's like, what? And guess what? Even experimenting with these mirrors at all summoned multiple UFOs to the site in Dixon. But also, guess what? I wasn't able to find any good sources or evidence about all that. The researchers weren't intending to contact extraterrestrials anyway, so we can probably leave that loose end to flap about a bit until it dies of natural causes. Yeah, this is just people, I don't know why conspiracy theorists are like this, but it's like, yeah, we got one conspiracy theory, just throw one about aliens in there as well. And it's like, yeah, also 9/11 not real. Just they throw all these ones in there. Why? It just makes it less easy to believe. According to an article on etherforce.energy, sounds reliable, the Kozyrev mirrors are installed in such a way to create a closed space in which there is a weakening of the magnetic field of the Earth, and which thereby provides more human access to solar and galactic information. Ah yes, solar information. Sun, so wise. So much information to be had from the sun. Galactic information, you say? Well, let's go through some of the findings from these experiments. And Trofimov and Kaznachev's bold claim that, quote, "We have found that consciousness is entangled with the cosmos." First is that the scientists discovered that humans experience time in a linear fashion, as there is an electromagnetic veil around the planet, filtering the time energy for us so we all don't lose our minds and could just concentrate on putting one foot in front of the other. Ah yes, famously, because when the astronauts went to the moon and they escaped, that time was totally different for them. Second, they found out, sarcasm by the way, second they found out that by limiting the electromagnetic field, i.e. by placing someone inside a Kozyrev mirror, this would grant their consciousness access to the everything, everywhere, all at once nature of time energy. Right, and so that happens to everyone who's inside a Faraday cage or what? This means that a person's consciousness could access any point in time they wanted, future or past, and any location on the planet. They also stated that people were more likely to be able to access this time realm depending on the solar electromagnetic activity occurring while that person was in utero. I don't know how they came to this conclusion, as you'd have to be following multiple people while they were still in the womb and measuring electromagnetic energy around them the whole time to then be able to make this claim. Yes, it sounds completely wild and unbelievable. We know they didn't do that, as the experiments only began in the late 80s, and they were reporting this hypothesis only a few years later. I don't think young children were being used in the Dixon experiments, so maybe they were just asking people how much their mothers covered up while they were pregnant. The final finding was that entering the enhanced state would leave a person's consciousness easily able to access it again. As we've entered into a bit of a confusing area, let's get even more confused. You must be Noosphere. Honestly, my brain is getting fried with this episode. Yes, mine too. Although I just comfort myself being it's just all a bit ridiculous, isn't it? It's mostly made up. But it's popped up a few times in my research, so I suppose we should mention it. Apparently, the noosphere is a philosophical concept credited to at least two different people. One a scientist, one a priest, both of whom have a different definition for it, so that's great. The first mention of the term comes from around 1922 by a Jesuit priest, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. I'm just going to quote Wikipedia for a lot of this, as these concepts are hard to explain any other way. De Chardin thought, the noosphere emerges through and is constituted by the interaction of human minds. The noosphere has grown in step with the organization of the human mass in relation to itself as it populates the Earth. As mankind organizes itself into more complex social networks, the higher the noosphere will grow in awareness. Okay, so he's like people are connected by their brains. And the more connected we get, the more connected we are. Right. Geoscientist Vladimir Verdansky took de Chardin's idea in a slightly different direction, where, according to Wikipedia again, the noosphere is the third of a succession of phases of development of the Earth. After the geosphere, inanimate matter, and the biosphere, biological life, just as the emergence of life fundamentally transformed the geosphere, the emergence of human cognition fundamentally transforms the biosphere. Okay, both of these ideas are grounded in the development of human consciousness, but de Chardin's theory is more of a theological, intangible concept, whereas Verdansky is talking about an actual development in the evolution of our planet. Right, now that's all cleared up. We can all now understand that Kozyrev's mirrors can help human consciousness come together in the noosphere, whatever that is. I think. Let's move on to the next component. Look who's torsion. We did briefly touch on torsion fields before, when we said Kozyrev also referred to as the flow of time as torsion, which could be measured to speed up or slow down the flow of time energy. The word torsion means to twist or rotate, and Kozyrev described theoretical torsional energy fields, which proposed that time energy could flow faster than the speed of light, and that all times existed together simultaneously. To quote Wikipedia again, because my brain exploded a few pages ago, also called axion field, spinor field, and microlepton field, torsion fields propose that the quantum spin of particles can be used to cause emanations to carry information through vacuum orders of magnitude faster than the speed of light. Is he talking about quantum entanglement?
I don't know what you're talking about, Howard.
If you recall, the setup of a Kozyrev mirror features a spiral of 1.5 twists. It's also usually constructed of aluminium, as this is a good material to reflect torsion energy. Here's where the noosphere and torsion fields combine in a Kozyrev mirror. According to the website subtle.energy, the mirror uses spiraled aluminium tubing to reflect the naturally occurring torsion fields produced by human thought back into the human biofield, thus amplifying torsion energy in the recipient. By reflecting thought energy back into a human subject, in this manner, consciousness is shifted in a similar fashion to meditation, in which one's sense of time is deeply altered. These just feels like lots of big words that describe nothing. Or nothing real. Okay, now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of what these things are alleged to be doing, which is move human consciousness through time. When sitting or standing inside the Kozyrev mirror structure, the pineal gland in a human's brain is directly activated. The pineal gland is also known as the third eye, linking it to sleep, consciousness, and the spiritual world, making these experiments the perfect way to test the abilities of our telecommunication powers. This just sounds like a weird fiction book. This just sounds like a fantasy book or a science fiction book, where this could be real, but it's not, because it's not. Because we live in the real world.
Sick burn.
Now we see in a mirror, dimly. With all this talk about how entering the spiral will let you travel through space and time, why aren't these things being built all over the place? I don't know, Katie. Maybe because it doesn't work. In most of the websites and videos I watched about this, there are plenty of comments saying that people are going to build their own. I mean, how hard can it be? Luckily, I found a handy website with step-by-step instructions. Step 1 is, first, a large cantilevered mirror is constructed to focus the vertical divergence from a synchrotron radiation source. The mirror is designed to be compact with a simple bending device and good thermal contact to structures outside the vacuum. Variable loading springs are used to reduce gravitational sag in the mirror. Again, it sounds like Star Trek, where they're in like engineering and something happens and they have to, there's some techno babble. Like, oh yeah, the port nacelle's out of alignment, so he can't do this or whatever. That kind of bullshit. Sounds exactly like that. Maybe this is why there isn't one in every home. I'm pretty sure this is an AI-generated site, but it was one of the first that came up when I typed in how to build a Kozyrev mirror. Although now that I think about it, maybe it's purportedly obtuse because they don't want the average Joe to know how to build a time-traveling, conscious-bending device. And who is they? Well, here's where I check the FlatEarthSociety.org. On a tab under the reassuring headline, Book of Wisdom, the most trusted source of information in the world, there's a short article about the mirrors. At the end, it poses the question about why the studies into Kozyrev mirrors have not been made more widely known, and the answer is, quoting, "The globalist gang that holds power in the world is trying to enslave people, not to liberate them. You haven't heard of these and similar efforts to raise awareness because they are censored in the media." Yes. Yeah, except here we are. After the collapse of Russia, many documents were spread all over the world, illegally or legally, and this study is one of them. There are also references to these studies in parts of the CIA studies disclosed to the media. Therefore, you have indirectly heard right now about this study. Yeah, okay, except the real reason that they're not in everyone's home is because they're not real! So according to the Flat Earth Society, go forth and sit in spiraled aluminium tubing to your heart's content. Busting your glass. Is spying on your enemies across the world or looking into the future really as easy as sitting inside a gently rotating metal tube? Come on now. What do you think? People seem to be easily won over when you start throwing terms like focusing radiation, psychophysical, and quantum spin around, but surely the results would speak for themselves. This idea is out in the world, and it seems pretty easy to make if you're handy and you feel like doing it yourself. So, why haven't we heard that Bob down the road has been visiting Mars and seeing all kinds of suspicious stuff there, or that Thingy and Watson are communicating with each other from hundreds of miles away without the use of a computer or phone? Well, maybe people are doing these things, but we just dismiss them as being weirdos rather than realizing that they are in fact opening up their extrasensory perceptions to the max. Oh yes, maybe it's because it just doesn't work in that way. Yeah, these people who do that, just weird. Just weird. The experiments carried out in Dixon are strange to say the least. People were receiving symbols hours before the person transmitting them has actually sent them. Well, must be torsion fields at work, right? Or it might be people just sitting there waiting and thinking they're supposed to be doing something, so picking out symbols whenever they feel like it, not realizing the person stuck in a mirror spiral on the little island hasn't actually done anything yet. These experiments seem to go on all day, so of course things would get out of whack. Trofimov tells us that, for example, a receiver got a set of 5 symbols hours before the sender sent them. Maybe what this actually means is the set of symbols the receiver chose corresponded better to a set the sender sent 5 hours later than they did with the ones they were sending at the time. Not time magic, it's just fiddling with the results. He never said the level of accuracy or the symbols sent and received either, so we can't draw any conclusions as to whether these trials showed anything useful. It's like, okay, so the computer's going to present an option, and then the person elsewhere has to match it up, and the only option is square. This is kind of bullshit. You can write that in a way that seems convincing until you realize the actual facts of the matter. As for the other wilder stories about summoning UFOs and force fields appearing, that just seems to be totally anecdotal and doesn't come up in any of the more scholarly or scientific articles I read, both of which should be read with extreme sarcasm. Yes, people erecting strange devices in the remoteness of northern Russia is a great concept to tack on extra supernatural things to, as there's no one around to corroborate or dispute the claims and no photos or videos of UFOs appearing or the northern lights flaring up being offered as evidence. Okay, so we can discount a spiral mirror as being a beacon for extraterrestrials, but do you think these things actually do anything at all? We've talked about the probably slightly exaggerated claims about what these mirror setups can do, and it's also fairly clear that they're not commonly used en masse to try and physically influence the population or wage some kind of psychic warfare. They do exist as objects in the world, however, but are advertised along the lines of well-being and spiritual harmony. There's a place in Moscow called quintessence that offers, among other things, for spiritual wellness, sessions in things based on Kozyrev mirrors that they call bioinformatic harmonizers. On their website, they say, due to their design and resonant properties, bioinformational harmonizers are able to concentrate and align the energy of the human etheric field. During a 40-minute session inside one of these things, you may feel things like a change in temperature, a sharpening of your hearing, and a tingling in your body. I mean, yeah, fair enough, because you're going to be in there in silence, so of course your hearing's going to become more acute. There's going to be a change of temperature because you're in an enclosed space and your body's pretty hot. And a tingling, I mean, sure, you just imagine that. That seems okay, but it also says you may experience illusion of flying, changing the perception of time, and observation of past and future events. I mean, these are like claims where it's like observation of past and future events, so remembering the past and thinking about the future. Illusion of flying, well, okay, how dark is it? And changing perception of time? Yeah, because you're bored off your tits. Of course you're going to be like, oh, this is taking forever. Big claims. It's 5,000 rubles for a session, which is just over $50 or £42, or you can make a tremendous saving with a package for 33,000 rubles. You can also choose whether your bioinformatic harmonizer is left coiled or right coiled, but I would urge you to pick the left coil, as Kozyrev believed that in the left rotating system, the flow of energy was positive and time energy was added. In the right system, the flow is negative. I've actually confused myself now, though, as if time energy is being added on, does that mean you're aging quicker, or are you extending your life? I don't think I'll go in one of these things, just in case. It's just nonsense, though. I'd go in one of these and be like, all right, so it's a shell-shaped mirror. To be honest, while I think we can safely say that you won't be remote viewing anything other than your reflection or whatever your imagination can conjure up while you're sitting and lying in a metal tube, you may go into a meditative state that is beneficial for your mental well-being in general. I had a brain scan a year or so ago, don't worry they didn't find anything, and I had to pull out all the stops on mental visualization of a nice, calm, open area, as it was so intensely claustrophobic in the machine that I thought I might actually have to press the panic button at first. Yeah, those I've not been in one, but I don't imagine, like, I'm not crazy about, like, fearful of enclosed spaces, but those things are, like, real tight. I imagine it pretty uncomfortable. Don't they give you, like, a Valium or something before you go in so you can just, like, chill? I definitely want that. And it's not even clear how these things work. I know we're almost at the end now, but there was nowhere I could find that clearly said whether all that was needed was someone being in one of these mirrors, or whether some other apparatus, such as an electromagnetic generator or something, was also needed to activate whatever the heck is supposed to be going on in there. The Quintessence site doesn't make any mention of other machines needed, or even if anything rotates. It just literally looks like an industrial metal cylinder with a mattress inside. Someone's got... That doesn't look like anything like I imagined it would look. This seems like nonsense, and that mattress is probably gross. Looking into it further, it seems that the only other thing needed is a platform that rotates a vertical spiral clockwise or anti-clockwise, which is what Trofimov and Kazanachev had in their patent for the thing in 1996, and which was approved in 1998. Interestingly, in the application it was called Device for Correction of Man's Psychosomatic Diseases, or at least that's the English translation of it. In the application, there's no mention at all of telepathy, ESP, or psychic enhancements of any kind. I imagine because the patent office would be like, what the fuck? It just kind of talks about an improvement in anxiety levels of people with various neuroses, a reduction in hypertension, and also a reduction in pain levels for some patients. I guess you wouldn't publicly patent a remote viewing UFO summoning chamber though, so maybe this is just a red herring. Yeah, you've got to make it sound scientific if you want a patent. You can't be like, summons UFOs, force fields, ball lightning, and allows you to see the past. Patent office would be like, bro, you don't need to be patenting. You need to see a psychiatrist.
Didn't make the psych evaluation.
If you're interested in trying out a Kozyrev mirror and can't be bothered to work out how to focus the vertical divergence from a synchrotron radiation source, there's a Swiss company called Fostak that can ship one out to your door. It's going to be bloody expensive, isn't it? You'll also be pleased to know that all their Kozyrev mirrors are additionally analyzed with Fostak technology, or whatever that is, although it does list Fostak tachyons in the technology information, so I guess it's those. This is just... Come on. It currently costs over 8,800 euros, or around $9,500, but that's not including shipping. I tried to see how much shipping to the US would run for a large mirrored chamber, but it just said thanks for your order and sent me an order confirmation, which is not what I wanted at all. Next thing you know, it's arrived and you got an invoice. And they're like, yo, pay us. I don't want it. Oh well, maybe I can claim it back on expenses. I also put my neighbor's address in instead of mine, so maybe they can deal with it when the time comes. Your neighbor's just got a massive aluminium cylinder rocking up outside their house. I watched a TikTok where someone was in the process of building one and had something crazy to show his viewers. He used an infrared imager inside the aluminium tube and you could clearly see his body show up on the screen. Then he turned off the lights and you could still see the same thing. Everyone in the comments was excited about how cool this was. I'm no science buff and I had to check my immediate suspicions, but it took me 2 seconds to confirm that yes, infrared imaging is showing his temperature or heat distribution. It's not any discovery about the reflective abilities of a Kozyrev mirror, so it doesn't matter if the lights are on or off, as long as he's still alive, it's going to show the same thing. Yeah, I was like, wait, mate, what do you think infrared imaging is? Why are people in the comments excited about this? People can't be that dumb, can they?
Can't all be idiots.
Yes, they can.
Just in case you still aren't convinced that there's absolutely nothing to this, Kozyrev's theories about time and energy are not proven. The whole torsion field thing lurks in that mysterious realm known as pseudoscience, which means that while people seem happy to hypothesize about it, it's definitely not regarded by the scientific community at large as being true or real. The mirrors are also in the pseudoscience area, with plenty of literature to be found, although most of it is interviews with Alexander Trofimov and articles in tabloids, etc. No scientific journals have given space to this piece of apparatus. Of course they haven't. In interviews with Trofimov about time energy, it gets very confusing, and I'm left wondering whether I'm missing something or whether this is just a load of gibberish. For instance, there's an article called Kozyrev's Mirrors and Electromagnetic Null Zones, Reflections of Russian Cosmic Science, where Trofimov is interviewed by Karol Hiltner. When talking about Nikolai Kozyrev, he says he created a small mirror to put inside a telescope, which he focused on one of the stars, and he programmed it for 3 times, 1 year in the past, the present, and 1 year in the future. I'm already confused about what this is supposed to mean, but he goes on to elaborate. He simply calculated using some mathematical methods. He had the know-how to calculate where it was, where it should be, and where it is, its projected location. So he realized that the star is present everywhere, in the past, present, and future. Wait, yeah, but the star follows the same path in the sky, because that's what stars do. Hiltner then points out, but that is common knowledge. What was the discovery? Well said, I love that shit. Trofimov replies, we wanted to prove it in a scientific way. Kozyrev proved it in astronomical terms. Our task was to prove it in biological terms. What are you talking about? So the legacy of Kozyrev was that if people could create such kinds of apparatus that are capable of creating density of the energy of time, from this point, they could have the opportunity to visit any place in the universe. Mate, you are off your rocker. You've taken Kozyrev's ideas, which were somewhat based in science and intelligent thought, and just made them insane, bro. Bit of a reach, maybe, but he then clarifies that as human beings are carbon life forms, they are part of a star's evolution, of course. And then to explain further, he says, and these streams coming out of human beings, they are not allowed to go everywhere in the space, but they are concentrated here, creating this density of the streams of time and energy. But a human being should be specially prepared, and when he spends some time inside, he finds himself in a particular state of mind. He can travel to any part of the planet, and there is a special ray enabling him to be in this or that part of the planet. Mate, you have lost it. What are you talking about? Well, you sound like a patient in a hospital. What's going on? I think this explains a lot, mainly that Trofimov is speaking out of his rear end. What this ray is also not clear. Is it a part of the mirror or another invention that Trofimov has come up with? It sounds like it should be some amazing technology if it's capable of beaming people all over the world, but sadly all the articles I found are just about the mirror and don't really mention a ray at all. The Flat Earth Society needs to get on the case about this. I tried to find some quotes about people who've been inside these things, but they're few and far between. Musician Ken Hyder was invited by Trofimov to try a session in the mirror along with his friend Tim. Here's what he had to say about it. Tim feels dizzy and sick and is almost on the point of stopping. I have a sensation of flying. Tim also has physical sensations, twinges. We experienced other things in this space, which we don't want to talk about. Okay, mate. It would have been very helpful to this police if he had talked about them, but I guess we'll never know. I also found a video by a guy who said he used to work in Moscow with the Center of the Study for Human Biogenetics, which may well have been the facility that we mentioned before. In his video, though, while he's sitting in a thing with circular metal walls, it seems like a large area, not the inside of a tighter spiral. Also, the spiral isn't rotating, or he isn't rotating, so really I have no idea what he's sitting in, as the only thing that's spinning is his yarn about having seen a desert and a mermaid, or some such nonsense. This is such nonsense. There are loads of posts on Reddit about people saying they'll build one, but none of them seem to actually do it. Someone called Mr. Carden across various platforms has actually been building one, but there's no report yet on if he's traveled through time. It's been going on for quite a while though, so maybe he looked into the future, saw it didn't work, and hasn't bothered finishing it. Well, if he looked into the future, then it did work, didn't it? It's a paradox. He was the guy with the infrared scanner thing, by the way, so don't expect too many mind-blowing scientific firsts if you follow him. Yeah, the guy who eats... He doesn't understand how infrared works. Maybe there aren't that many first-hand accounts because A, people can't be bothered to actually build the thing, or B, they haven't built it correctly, so they're missing the rotating component, or the magic ray, for example, or maybe it's C, whatever happens inside a Kozyrev mirror isn't worth writing home about. Yes, I imagine it's all three. People can't be bothered, they don't build them properly, and they don't work. All of the above, Katie. Really, the only people who've done any research into this are Alexander Trofimov and Vlail Kaznachev, with Trofimov especially popping up for various interviews, but their apparent psychic experiment results have not been verified scientifically, and that whole area of the mirror's powers has been dismissed as esoteric exaggeration at best. It's also probably worth saying that people who want to experience the weird things these mirrors can supposedly do are people who really want this to happen. They're predisposed to experiencing wacky shit. If someone was just put inside a rotating mirror spiral for a while with no clue why they were there, they probably wouldn't be able to see the future, or if they had any visions at all, it would just be produced by their own imagination, as they would have nothing to do inside this thing except sit there and stare at themselves in the walls. People who report seeing other things or having strange experiences were probably already aware of the reputation of the mirror, so knew what kind of things were expected to happen, thus making it more likely that they might start experiencing strange things inside a rotating mirror. At the start, I said I'm unlikely to go and find one of these things should the opportunity arise, and now I know it spins around too, I'd probably just black out. I'll stay on this side of the glass for now, but if you fancy seeing if you can access other dimensions of time and space in the comfort of your own home, my neighbor might have a Kozyrev mirror that they'll want to sell you in the near future, but don't buy it because it's $10,000 that you'll never get back, and you'll just have a useless giant mirror machine. Allegedly useless. Thanks for being here.